I don't care what side you are on. You right now have an opportunity to make a difference.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast chair, your host here of the Appraiser Coach Podcast. I want to talk today about getting involved. Don't turn off the dial. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. First, I want to pause and remind you that we're sponsored by Spark. Spark is a program that'll help you to save money. We all want to save money. Check them out. Spark4appraisers.com. Spark, F-O-R, appraisers with an S.com. I want to tell you a brief story, a couple stories actually today. And it's about becoming involved. Before I do so, I want to remind you of my background a little bit. For those of you who knew the program, you may not know this, but I'll make it a long story short by saying this. There was a period of time in my life that I dedicated a lot of hours every week to political causes, to being involved, if you will. And I'm not talking about appraisal side necessarily, though I was involved on that as well. I'm talking about just involved in local politics, involved in national politics, involved in state politics. I had a burning desire to be the very best that I could be and be the best citizen that I can be, to get involved in what's going on in the world, to be involved in what is going on in the laws and my representatives. Again, it's a long story. Shorthand of it is it was about 3 to 5 years of my life that I ran a nonprofit. I had a podcast other than the Appraiser Coach Podcast. I was heavily involved in trying to be the best citizen that I could be. Okay, set that aside for a second. The unfortunate part of that story is I will admit that I, after a period of time, got a little disgruntled and burned out. I was the biggest cheerleader you could probably find for get involved, get out and vote, do whatever you can, run for office if that's something that you feel like you can do. And after several years of feeling like I didn't have much of a say, I didn't have much sway over others, I got a little bit burned out and spent many years to follow. Really not, I would still vote in every election. I would still, I don't feel good about voting without knowing a little bit, at least to do some research and, hey, here's 2 people running for a seat. Let's learn as much as I can about the people before I vote. I felt a lot of times like my vote was the lesser of 2 evils. I hate that feeling, but politics is there's a lot of that in politics. Now I want to fast forward. I want to fast forward to, and by the way, I promise this is going to, after the break, come back to appraisal. Okay. There's a reason this is called the Appraiser Coach Podcast. And we will get to that. Recently, you all know that I've made some investments in some Airbnbs, and I've made some significant investments in some Airbnbs in a particular area of the country. In that particular area of the country, lately, there's been a big push against Airbnb. Okay, I'm not going to get into the politics back and forth of that, but I will tell you this, that there is a group of citizens in this particular small community that decided that they were going to pass a major tax hike that would be passed on to the guest. Okay, we're talking 5% more than we already pay, and we already pay like 14% in that area. So close to 20% of revenue would be going out the door to taxes. Again, long story short, a group of us Airbnb owners decided to get together and do whatever we possibly could to stop that tax from happening. It was a local tax. It is only for local residents to vote on. So even though I own property in the tax district, I was unable to vote. taxation without representation much. But I was able to do politicking, if you will, grassroots efforts where we bought yard signs, and we were very active on social media, and we put money and time and effort into getting the word out as to what this really was. Okay, day of the vote comes. The day of the vote was May 19th of this year. Over 400 people showed up to vote. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot of people, but folks, in a small community, I think there's like 500 people in the community. Right? I mean, it's not a big community. Over 400 people came out to vote. They said it was a bigger turnout than the presidential election. And after the votes were all tallied, we stopped that vote by 9 ballots. 9. I mean, that is incredible. 2% of the vote. We stopped that vote by our efforts. And it renewed my faith in politics. Now, not completely. I'm not going to dive back into a podcast and a nonprofit and all the things that I used to do, but I'll tell you, a lot of the disgruntledness, if that's a word, that I've had over the last few years kind of disappeared over the last couple of weeks when that happened. I want to tell you another quick story when we get back from the break, and I want to parlay that into appraisal and what that means for you and what that means for me. First, I want to pause and talk to you about something else that means a lot to me, and that is saving money. That is efficiency, right? When you run your business, when you are the technician and the business owner, time is money. I mean that, folks. It's huge. Time is money. You have an opportunity to save money by investing in money in a little thing called Spark. Don't know what I'm talking about, folks? You would be blown away at how cool this is. Check it out. Go to spark4appraisers.com. Again, it's Spark, F-O-R, appraisers.com. Another quick story. Welcome back, by the way. Quick mini-sode for you today. Appreciate you joining me. Another quick story for you. Yesterday, had a friend of mine reach out, and we've been trying to get together for lunch for a couple of weeks now. And I think I reached out to him in the morning, and he reached out to me a couple hours later and said, "Hey, I didn't think I had time today, but I've got time if you can come run an errand with me." And I said, "Okay, great. Let's go get some to-go food. We'll jump in your truck. We'll go run an errand." And so we did. And we ran out to, he's a AI guy, not AI as in artificial intelligence, but AI as in artificial insemination for cattle. And we went out to take care of some things he needed to do on a big farm here locally in Idaho Falls. And while we were out there, another individual walked up, and I recognized him immediately. I've never met him personally, but I recognized him immediately as my representative in my local community. Now, he and I have not seen eye to eye on a lot of things. I have the utmost respect for him as a person. I have the utmost respect for him as a representative. I just disagree with a lot of the things that he does. I think that he oversteps his bounds quite often when it comes to the proper role of government. And believe it or not, I know it's going to come as a shock to many of you, Dustin Harris is not very quiet. And so he hears from me quite often. I've got him on Facebook Messenger, and quite often I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this bill? And what do you think about that bill?" And he'll, he and I will banter back and forth. He didn't recognize me. Rightfully so, right? He deals with many, many thousands of constituents. I'm just one person, but I recognized him. So I had this conversation with him. I introduced myself, and then I said, "I'm a constituent and I've got a couple questions. If you don't mind, I don't want to interrupt." He's also an AI guy, right? And I said, "I don't want to interrupt your flow of things here, but I do have a couple questions on some recent bills." And we started talking. I'm not going to go into the details, but I walked away from that conversation thinking, what's really cool is we still live in a country when we can actually run into and meet our representatives in person, right? Whether it be on Facebook or email or phone calls, or you bump into them at a farm. right? We still have an opportunity to talk to and understand our representative. Now, I walked away from that conversation as much in a disagreement with him as before I started the conversation. That's not even the point. The point is that at least on a local level, you can and should have an effect on things, right? You should have the ability to be able to let your voice be heard. Okay. Let's roll that in quickly before we close up here to appraisal. There are a lot of changes coming up, folks. If you have not been following this program, if you've not been following Working RE Magazine, if you've not been following some of the other things out there that help us to understand what's going on in our career, folks, you need to. Now, I know I'm talking to the choir. You wouldn't be here if you weren't, right? One of the reasons you come to this program is not because of my beautiful face, although I'm sure a lot of you on YouTube, that's why you listen on YouTube, watch on YouTube. It's because of the information that we get out there. Folks, whether you agree or disagree, and I mean this, okay, whether you agree or disagree with data collectors, with the modification program, with the new forms that Fannie Mae is coming out with the UAD, with the modifications that are going to make a huge difference in the way that we do things in the future, whether or not I don't care what side you are on. You right now have an opportunity to make a difference. The race thing, right? The racial bias comments and the things that are being said out there, right? You have an opportunity right now to let your voice be heard. And I think we've been let down by a lot of our representatives. I'm using that term loosely, right? I've watched some of these panels. I've watched some of these White House hearings or congressional hearings, and I've been disgusted at some of these people that say they represent me, right? But now is the time to get involved, okay? I know that sounds cliche. I know you've heard that from the time you were knee-high to a duck, right? To get involved, get out there and vote. It's important. I hope the two stories that I told you today will help to encourage you to say, you know what? We can make a difference. And when it comes to our own career and the way that you and I make money into the future, the way that we feed our families, the stakes could not be higher. Thank you, folks, for joining me. By the way, I was thinking the other day that it's been a while since somebody gave us a 5-star review on the podcast structure that you're listening on right now, whether that be iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever. Please, folks, it helps us so much. Take some time, give us a 5-star review. Let us know what you like about the program. Appreciate it. Go create some value.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.